Welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys are doing great. I know that in these significant times of learning and being called out of Egypt and out of Babylon yet again, it's easy to get frustrated with all of the information that's out there and seeing so many different things and finding out that everything's evil and everything's pagan and everything's evil and wondering why it is that you feel so secluded when you start finding truth. You feel like you're on that narrow path and people on both sides are throwing rocks at you. I understand the feeling, and I want you to know that you're not alone. The Father's people have always had these battles where they have essentially been attacked from all these different angles. And there's a journey that I'm looking at of the Father's people and the journey that He's experienced and that He's put all of us on from the very beginning. And I'm just blessed that it's starting to really make sense. And so I want to share some of the things that we're seeing or that he's showing to us. It's not like, hey, I'm just seeing these things because I'm a genius. This is spiritual stuff. It's powerful stuff. And so I want to share it in a way that makes sense. It's like a timeline journey. It's going to take us into and out of Egypt many times. And so to start out, before we get into the journey aspect of going into Egypt, I want to remind you guys of the very first death to ever happen. We've talked about it before. It was that innocent shepherd named Abel. He was killed after making an acceptable sacrifice of a lamb to the Most High. And so there was jealousy there, there was anger, and his own brother killed him. And so that's something that's going to be significant later on. Just wanted to remind you of that before we get too deep into this journey, and then show you where the kingdom of Egypt was to be established. And it was right next to Babylon, or the Babylonian kingdom. Those two were side by side. And so being called out of Babylon is a lot like being called out of Egypt, in my opinion, for those reasons. And so when you see that in Revelation, come out of her, my people, it's a lot of those same types of practices, the same ones that were in Egypt, those false gods they were serving. And so knowing that, we're going to start going through that historic journey of one of our first times into Egypt. And to my surprise, looking through the word again and studying things out, I was reminded that it was Abram, who would eventually become known as Abraham, that was led into Egypt. And what's cool about this story is he was led into Egypt after he was blessed, after the Father says he's going to make a great nation of him and bless him, and that anyone that curses him will be cursed, and that anyone who blesses him will be blessed. Essentially, he goes on this journey. And with his journey, it starts out with a famine. There's a famine. Where does he go? He goes into Egypt because of a famine with his beautiful wife, Sarai. And he knows, hey, that she's beautiful. And so we've got this plan that if they see her, they're going to try to kill me and take my wife. So let's just say she's my sister. And so that was his plan after he had already been blessed. Well, what happens next? Many of you have seen this story where Pharaoh is plagued because the Father's words come true. They are cursing Abraham essentially by taking his wife. And so that would end up causing plagues to fall on Pharaoh. However, instead of killing him, of course, he can't because he's been blessed. And, no one can curse what the Most High has blessed. Pharaoh sends him away with his wife and with sheep and camels and oxen and asses, it tells us, and servants, men servants, maid servants, all these different things he has. He acquires some wealth and he leaves Egypt during this famine with more than he came with. Sort of sounds like a theme, like a theme that's about to take place yet again. And so I laid this out like a timeline so you guys can see it. You have Abraham, of course, going into here with his wife, plagues falling on Pharaoh, and then he is leaving Egypt with the sheep. Well, talking about him being blessed and becoming a great nation, he has to have children. There's some miracles in that story as well. And so his children, of course, Isaac being his child. And so you have Isaac, and then you have Jacob. And Jacob, even though he's not looked at as a shepherd, is one of those significant figures when it comes to his well. And we'll see that later on. But when he has his dream, and if you're not familiar with this story, just to kind of give you the Cliff Notes version, he has this dream. There's this ladder stretching up to the firmament, and there's angels, and it says that these angels are going up and down the ladder, and that the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And so this is where you start seeing that seed of Jacob narrative come into being. And Jacob, what happens after this dream? He comes to a well. And this well that he comes to, this is what's cool. It says it has a giant stone on top of it. And so he moves this giant stone. The giant stone is rolled away. And these 3 flocks of sheep that were there, he gives them water. Something that used to seem random is now starting to seem prophetic. The stone rolling away that was on top of this giant well, him watering these flocks of sheep, and then him having his children, his promised seed, the seed of Jacob. And you have the 12 tribes. And these 12 tribes weren't perfect. They're far from perfect. And they end up selling one of their brothers into slavery. This brother's name was Joseph. So you have Joseph, the son of Jacob, getting sold into slavery under false pretenses. He was innocent, just like the first person ever killed, and he was going to check on his brothers as they were watching their father's sheep. So you have these bad shepherds. What do? They sell their brother into slavery. They cast him into a pit, and some of Abraham's descendants, the Ishmaelites, come along, and they take him and bring him into Egypt, where he's sold into slavery, like I said. And he is still, even though he's in slavery, gains favor. He is blessed. The Most High is blessing him, even in his slavery position. He's put into this position for a reason. He's then cast into prison, falsely accused again, goes into prison this time. But the Most High still blesses him and takes him from a prisoner to someone of great authority who's ruling over Egypt in many ways and is able to prepare them for a famine. And so not only did Abraham go into Egypt because of a famine, the seed of Jacob then ends up going into Egypt because of this famine. And it was for that reason that the Father sent him there, was to preserve the seed of Jacob. So now he has this authority. He's prepared for the hardships to come, and it is used to save the seed of Jacob's life. Not only that, Jacob eventually comes into Egypt. It's a really amazing story of forgiveness. Joseph forgives his brothers, and he tells them exactly that the Father sent him ahead of you to preserve your lives. He forgives them, and they know that he could have ended their life. They didn't even recognize him. They thought he was one of the Egyptians. So you have the Father's people merging with the people of Egypt, coming into Egypt. And it's good for a time, but Joseph eventually dies. So the one with the leadership role who has his family brought in dies. Prophecies being fulfilled. The seed is multiplying in Egypt. This is something that terrifies the pharaohs of Egypt, the leaders of Egypt. They're like, hey, these people are getting so overpopulated here. We have to do something to control them. So they start killing them and persecuting them, putting them in slavery, just like Joseph was put in slavery. And so you have the miracle again of an ark being made with pitch inside and out. And one of these, seed of Jacob, a Hebrew or an Israelite, seed of Jacob, was placed into this ark, and he was the one that the Father used to bring them out of Egypt. And so this Moses character, this is where things start to get fascinating, because Moses, he gets brought into this ark, and just like Joseph, he gets brought into a place of rulership, a place where he is right there under Pharaoh and taken in as their own. And so he's raised in Egypt. He knows their ways, he knows their language, he knows all their practices, all their customs, all these things. And he's one of them. But he finds out he's not one of them. And eventually he ends up getting in trouble after he kills somebody who's persecuting his people. And so he flees Egypt. And what happens? He comes to a well. A lot like Jacob, he comes to a well. And this time there's bad shepherds. And there's 7 daughters or 7 shepherds, the daughters of the priest of Midian. And so what are they doing? They're trying to water their father's flock. They can't because there's bad shepherds. Here comes Moses. He fights them off. And so he then waters the flock, just like Jacob did. And so he waters this flock. He ends up getting to marry one of the daughters. And it's pretty cool that this all happens. I mean, this is the Father's foreknowledge, him working things out to deliver his people. And so what happens next? This is something that I just totally missed when it comes to the pattern. But it says Moses, he kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. And it says the priest of Midian. So his father-in-law is a priest. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and he came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And so you have him leading sheep to the mountain of the Most High. And this is before he goes to Egypt to do exactly that. So how cool is this? You have him doing this, then the father gives him instructions. He goes into Egypt, and just like Abraham, he plagues Pharaoh, okay? Or the father does. And so he's using this person of the seed of Jacob that he's already blessed, just like Abraham, to set his people free. And so you have the plagues on Pharaoh, which I believe was foreshadowed with Abraham. Eventually, for those of you who know the story, the people get set free out of Egypt, the seed of Jacob. And also some Egyptians come with them. It's not just the seed of Jacob. And they even take those bones of Joseph with them out of Egypt. You know, out of Egypt have I called my son. That prophecy we see come true with the Messiah. You have that with Joseph right here, and Jacob had already been taken out of Egypt, his bones, anyways. And that's when he leads these sheep, this time the father sheep, to the mountain of the Most High. And what do these stubborn sheep do? Of course, they have the golden calf and all these different things that show us the Father's long suffering and his patience with his people. And so they had just come out of Egypt. We too are coming out of these Egyptian and Babylonian practices, and our Father has had patience with us. When we look back at all the things that we've done, we know that there's a merciful Father who has been patient with us as we learn his ways, as we learn how to walk. And this journey continues. And when we go in order, there's a lot of things that happened after Moses. There's a lot of things that happened before they went into the promised land. And so you have these stubborn people wanting kings. They eventually get a king named Saul, and he's a bad king. And he's not, I mean, he's not horribly bad, but he's not perfect. He does some things that are wrong. And so the father chooses a shepherd, an innocent shepherd, a righteous shepherd by the name of David to be king. He's anointed by Samuel, the prophet. And so this innocent, unassuming shepherd tending his father's sheep, and he is from Bethlehem. He's a Bethlehemite, which means he's from Bethlehem, this innocent shepherd. And so what happens with this shepherd? Well, those of you who know the story of David and Goliath, he ends up slaying this beast of a man by leaving a mark in his forehead with a stone. Remember, that very first innocent shepherd was killed by a stone, and here you have a shepherd killing a giant with a stone. A giant who was of a nation that was against Israel, against the father's people. And so it wasn't like he became a king right away, but eventually he did become king of Israel. And he was a fairly good king, one of the last of the good ones for a while. And then flash forward, what do you have? You have someone who is looked at as a king, king of the Jews, born where else? Bethlehem, in a manger. You have that shepherd connection. He's called the Lamb in Revelation. He's born in a manger. And so you have this powerful, symbolic, prophetic chain of events happening that are mind blowing. And what happens after that, it gets more mind blowing. He's not just born in Bethlehem and stays there and just becomes this ruler king like everybody was expecting. They get up, they leave. He goes into Egypt. Who is taking him to Egypt is a man named Joseph, who is the son of Jacob. Think about that. Joseph, the son of Jacob, taking the beloved son into Egypt for the start of his life, the first few years of his life. Wow. Full circle. It's a beautiful story, guys. And it's showing us something here. And you have him going there until he fulfills that prophecy, out of Egypt have I called my son. This is in Matthew chapter 2. And what would eventually happen? This same person, this Messiah, the one that was foretold many times, he comes to a well. What well does he come to? Jacob's well. Remember, it says there was a giant stone on this well? Well, it says that he sat on the well. The beloved son sat on this well, the one that watered those 3 flocks of sheep. And he tells the woman there that if she knew the gift of God and who it was that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. He would have given her living water. She was confused. We're so literal when we're hearing things that are spiritual. And the prophecies about that fountain of living water are what really set this whole thing together. And the foreshadowing with all these shepherds. He tells us that he is the good shepherd, and that the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, since he isn't a shepherd and the sheep aren't his own, sees the wolf coming, abandons the sheep, and runs away. Then the wolf drags them off and scatters them. That wolf reminds me of the parable in Enoch, where he talks about the wolf being symbolic of Egypt. The wolf drags them off and scatters them. The hired worker behaves like this because that's all he is, a hired worker. So it doesn't matter to him what happens to the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life on behalf of the sheep. Also, I have other sheep which are not from this pen. I need to bring them, and they will hear my voice. And there will be one flock, one shepherd. This is why the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. Wow. This is beautiful, guys. This is the most beautiful journey out there, a journey to the Good Shepherd. We don't deserve to be called out of Egypt, to be brought into that sheep pen, but the Father gives us away like he has so many times. And this lamb that is mentioned in Revelation, it's in the midst of the throne. It tells us here that he shall feed them and shall lead them unto living fountains of water, and that Yahuwah shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes. What are these living fountains of waters? Well, I'm just reminded of Jeremiah when the Most High was upset with his long suffering, the people leaving him. When he says, my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. They forsaken him, the fountain of living waters. It's heartbreaking after all he's done for us, what people have done to him throughout time, and how much he has seen and witnessed and been through, and still reached his hand out for us. And this thought brings me to Isaiah, where it says, behold, the Lord God will come with a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young. This is what's about to happen. And in many ways, it's happening right now. There's about to be a gathering, unlike any gathering that's ever happened, greater than the one where they were called out of Egypt. And that's what we all need to be prepared for. And it's tough because we have so many of those Egyptian and Babylonian practices intermixed with truth. And so our goal, all of our goals, should be to get people to come out of Babylon, to come out of Egypt, to see the truth, to see what the Father's been through. And all of these things that He is showing us are for a reason. And I'm so thankful that He's shown us these things and to be a part of this journey. It's tough, it's not easy. I know a lot of you, I'm seeing your frustration as people are turning against you, people you thought were your friends, people on both sides of the equation, mainstream Christians, even Torah keeping people being hateful towards other people who are doing certain things, celebrating Christmas, whatever it is. Be patient. Send love to these people who were stuck in Egypt, stuck in Babylon. The Father was patient with them, and we were made in His image. And so it's time that we really start sharing that light and that love and that message, that we're being called out yet again. And man, it's hard to talk about this and not get emotional because it's so real. And so I wanted to share it and hopefully do it in a way that makes sense and allows you to see the pattern of what we've gone through as His people. And so share this with those who you think could benefit from it, and all those people who need to see the truth about what our Father's been through, what His people have been through. Why there are so many false teachings out there about who He is, who His Son is, and all of the things that have been done to prevent us from getting that relationship with Him like the beloved Son had, and getting us to walk far from the same path that His beloved Son walked. Okay, we're supposed to follow in His steps. And so walking like Him doesn't mean the whole world's going to love you. The world hated Him. Okay, He had a lot of people, His own, the ones that knew His voice, like He said, the sheep that knew His voice, that loved Him and followed after Him. But there's so many who don't even know what His steps looked like because we've been lied to about who He is in general and how we're supposed to walk. And so it's going to look different. It's not going to look like the rest of the world, but it's going to be one of those paths that sets you free, just like we've seen all these patterns of His people being called out of Egypt. It'll bring you out of Egypt and closer to the Most High. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share this with you guys, to help you see that pattern and come further out of Egypt and be motivated to do so, because we have to do so rather quickly. Times are really speeding up, it feels like, with days passing like minutes. And so I know that the time is far closer than a lot of us can fathom right now. I mean, I feel like it's right around the corner. Could be 20 years, could be 3 years, could be 1 year, could be a day. I don't know. I know it's close. And so we thank you guys for your prayers and your support and your patience. And for those of you who have been supporting us along the way with all the things that you've done, it's been a blessing. So we thank you. The Father loves you. And it's been a blessing, to say the least, to be on this journey with you guys. And so to let you guys get to your studies and hopefully sharing some things with us, I'll go ahead and let you guys do that. Feel free to share anything you're seeing that adds to this. This is one of those ongoing studies I feel that will grow with time and hopefully reach a lot of people as it continues to grow. So we thank you guys again. We love you. The Father loves you, and we'll see you around real soon.
I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice. And there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father.